Welcome back to Fantasy Fights. This time we're going to take a look at the top 10 heavyweights of the 1940s. This was a decade dominated by World War II and also dominated by the Brown Bomber Joe Louis. But there were other great fighters during the decade, and we're going to take a closer look at them. At number 10, Joe Baxi out of New York City. Came out of the coal mines of Pennsylvania. 61-9-3 was his record. He's 6'1", 210, which was rather big heavyweight for the 1940s. He was ranked number 4 by Ring Magazine and came to prominence after his 1944 10-round win over Tammy Mariela. This thrust him into the heavyweight picture, and here he is in action against Freddie Mills in Great Britain. You can see he's a rather large fighter. That's him with his back to you there. And he went on to win this fight, and with it was in line to fight Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion, when he got out of the military service. But unfortunately, he took a fight in Stockholm, Sweden against Ali Tannenberg and was upset over 10 rounds, and that ended his hopes. At number 9, Lee Savold. Fought out of St. Paul, Minnesota, 98-41-3. He was a contender all the way through the 1940s. As early as 1942 when he upset Lou Nova, all the way up until 1952 with his last fight against Rocky Marciano. He was in and out of the rankings. He also had a win against Arturo Gatti, and he lost to Elmer Ray. Here he is against Joe Louis. He's one of the few fighters that fought both Joe Louis and Marciano. You can see his inside fighting there. He was known as a crafty boxer, quick hands. He lost this fight to Joe Louis. Joe Louis was coming out of his retirement. I believe this is 1951. And here he is against Rocky Marciano. This is 1952, and I believe this was his last fight. He was still a contender at this time. He was still challenging for a title fight. This fight actually took place before Marciano won the title. Lee Savold comes in at number 9. Coming in at number 8 is a very underrated fighter named Turkey Thompson. Fought out of Los Angeles, originally from Oklahoma, 54-15-2, 5'8.5", 192 pounds, ranked number 3 by Ring Magazine in 1942. Because of the low wages for African American fighters, it was common for him to fight fighters over and over again, and you can see his series record. It was pretty impressive. He did have a win over Elmer Ray, which was probably the high mark of his career. We don't have any footage on him, but he was a very competitive fighter. He was in and out of the rankings throughout the decade, and well deserving of this number 8 ranking. Turkey Thompson. At number 7 is Tammy Mariela. Mariela was from the Bronx in New York City. 82-13-1, 5'11.5", 198, had a 73-inch reach. He was a top contender according to Ring Magazine in 1946, but he was the number 2 contender in 42, 43, 44, and 45. And he got a title shot against Joe Louis in 1946. Unfortunately, he lost in the first round. Had a big win over Bruce Woodcock, and he lost to Jimmy Bivvens twice, and he fought a draw with Bob Pasteur. Here he is working out. And here he is against Joe Louis. Shows you his style of fighting. He's kind of a roughhouse fighter. His claim to fame was putting Louis on the canvas in the first round. Louis got up and ends up knocking out Mariela in the first round, and there's a left hook by Joe Louis. He had a pretty impressive record. He fought all the top fighters of the 1940s and more than held his own and held that lofty position in the rankings for 5 straight years. You can see he doesn't lack for aggressiveness. Very aggressive fighter. Very tough. This was in Yankee Stadium in 1946. Louis is going to go on and knock him out. One of the most famous fighters of the 1940s that comes in at number 6, and that was Billy Conn of Pittsburgh. 63-11-1. He was a top contender, according to Ring Magazine, in 41 and 45, and he fought Joe Louis twice for the heavyweight championship in 1941 and 1946. He made his claim to fame as a light heavyweight champion, and here he is against Joe Louis, and gave Joe Louis his toughest fight as champion in 1941. For 13 rounds, Billy Conn put it on him. And you can see him, his boxing style, he was not very big. He was only a light heavyweight, but he's very fast with his hands, tough. After 5 years of service duty, Louis came back and they fought again, but Conn was nowhere near as effective and was knocked out in the 8th round. He lost in the 13th round knockout in 1941. He comes in at number 6. At number 5, Elmer Ray from Florida. 96-23-1 record, 6'2", 195, 78-inch reach. He was number 2, ranked heavyweight by Ring Magazine in 1946 and 47. He had an undefeated streak from 1943 to 1947. In 43, he lost to Turkey Thompson, and then in 47, after 50 straight wins, he lost to Jersey Joe Walcott. He held down wins over Ezar Charles in 47, a 10-round split decision, and he also beat Jersey Joe Walcott in 46. He felt like he was in line for the heavyweight championship title fight. He never received that. Joe Louis was a champion coming out of military duty. Here he is against Ezar Charles. We don't have any real good footage of him, but you can see he was very muscular. He could take a punch. And it was unfortunate that when he was in his prime, Joe Louis was actually in the military, so they never got to fight. And he felt robbed because of that. He finally got to fight Joe Louis in 1949 in an exhibition, but he was well past his prime at that time. I believe he was knocked down in the 4th round and then stopped the exhibition. But he was a tough customer. He had a detached retina following the Charles fight, which pretty much ended his career. And here he is against Jersey Joe Walcott, another rival of his. No question, he was in the top 5. Coming in at number 4, Jimmy Bivvens, Cleveland, Ohio, 86-25-1. 5'9", 188. Had a 78-inch reach. He's listed here at 76, but it varied. He was ranked number 1 by Ring Magazine in 1942 and 1943. He had key wins over 3 of the more prominent fighters in the period, Ezar Charles, Archie Moore, and Tammy Mariela. He also was undefeated from 1942 to 1946. He had an unusually long reach for a man his size, as you can see right here. This is him against Archie Moore, one of the best fighters of the 40s and 50s. Both of them started out in the light heavyweight division, but both of them graduated up to the heavyweight division. More money, more exposure. You can see his long reach enabled him to fight at a distance. Here he is fighting Ezar Charles, another one of his rivals. And here's some more action against Archie Moore. Bivvens was called the uncrowned heavyweight champion of the war period. When Joe Louis went into the war, World War II, Bivvens was crowned the uncrowned champion. Here he is against Joe Louis. He lost that fight in 1950, I believe it was. Bivvens was well past his prime, and so was Joe Louis. And here he is in action also against Ezar Charles. Jimmy Bivvens, number 4. Coming in at number 3 is Jersey Joe Walcott from Camden, New Jersey, 49, 20-1. He was a heavyweight champion of the world from 1951 to 52, and he fought the best the division had. He came into prominence in 1947. He fought a series against Elmer Ray, Jimmy Bivvens, Joey Maxson, Rocky Marciano, Ezar Charles, and the great Joe Louis. He more than held his own. Here he is in 1947 in his title fight against Joe Louis, and here he puts Joe on the canvas. Most observers felt like Walcott deserved the victory, but they gave the title back to Joe Louis in the decision. They fought again, and Louis knocked out Walcott in the 11th round, and that was Joe Louis's last fight before his first retirement. Walcott was a very crafty fighter. There's little question that he ranks number 3 in the decade. He just very quick, fought the best the division had to offer, and more than held his own. He's a very smooth, crafty boxer, Jersey Joe Walcott. Coming in at number 2, Ezar Charles, a heavyweight champion from 1949 to 51. He fought the best the period had to offer. Joey Maxson, he was 5-0. Jimmy Bivvens, 4-1. Archie Moore, 3-0. Elmer Ray, he was 1-1. Jersey Joe Walcott, 2-2. And Joe Louis was past his prime when he fought Charles, but he also defeated him in 1950. Here he is in action. The reason I put him ahead of Jersey Joe, in his prime he was 2-0 against Jersey Joe. He fought well beyond his prime, well up into the 50s. Great fighter, Ezar Charles. Before I discuss the top fighter of the decade, please hit the like button and subscribe. And I'd love to hear from you about who you think were the top fighters of the 1940s. Joe Louis comes in at number 1, 66-3. During his prime, he only lost to one fighter, and that was Max Schmeling. And he knocked him out in the first round in their rematch in 1938. 6'1", 190 pounds, held the title from 37 to 49. He dominated that period of time, and including the decade. He had 25 straight title defenses. Following his victory in 1948 over Jersey Joe Walcott, he went into retirement. Unfortunately, he had to come out of retirement because of financial reasons. He lost to then heavyweight champion Ezar Charles in a 15-round decision, and then he lost in an 8-round knockout loss to Rocky Marciano when he was well past his prime. But there's little question, one of the all-time greats, and definitely the top fighter of the 1940s.